Well, thank you for being here today. My concern is Social Security. I think businesses are less likely to have pension plans anymore. How would you strengthen Social Security for the people? Because I think people are going to be more dependent on it rather than less dependent on it in the future.
I agree. You know what's interesting is I was in a relatively small town in Iowa called Grinnell not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago. We were having a town hall similar to this there, and it's a college town. There's a university there. There was a young college student there. I asked him how old he was. I think he said he was 18 or 19. But the number one issue on his mind was Social Security. And he said in the microphone, he said, you all might think I'm crazy for actually thinking about this right now, but I'm worried about whether or not Social Security will be there for me when I grow up. And it's a valid worry, given the trend that we have seen in the Social Security fund being raided time and time and time again to pay for other things in our government that have nothing to do with strengthening or expanding Social Security. So to me, that's the number one change that I'd make as president, to work to pass a law that would prohibit the raiding of Social Security fund for any other purpose. Because that's a fund that every one of us has paid into throughout our lives. It's not an entitlement, as some would say. This is a benefit that every one of us has contributed to and earned throughout our lives. I think that how do we expand it? Because we're seeing how even as the cost of living in so many states has continued to rise, rising cost of healthcare, rising cost of housing, all these other things that are contributing to the rising cost of living, increases in Social Security have been marginal at best, not anywhere near keeping up with inflation, and things cost more. So we've got to be able to expand it, both for Social Security beneficiaries as well as those who are relying on SSI and disability. I think that a relatively simple way to do that would be lifting the cap on those who pay in to Social Security. That would provide for those who are making a lot more to be able to contribute more to this.
Thank you. We're running low on time, so I think we've got to wrap it up.
We'll take the last one here in the back. Yes, sir. Yes, you. Make it good. Make it good.
Okay, so no pressure, right? So over the last week or so, Donald Trump did something very blatant, I think, in Seria, announcing that he was going to send troops to protect and potentially fight for Syrian oil. And the refreshing thing is that he was honest about it, but I would have thought that that would have created quite a brouhaha, just for him to talk about doing something is... Anyway, I just was hoping that you could kind of give us your take on what's going on.
Sure, yeah, I have some thoughts. There is legislation that I've introduced, actually, and that I'm working on getting a strong partner in the U.S. Senate to introduce, and the Senate side as well, that deals with this very issue. How many of you know what he's talking about? Let me just start there. Okay, wow, almost all of you. Awesome. Both President Trump's statements, confirmed by Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, confirmed that his intent is to deploy U.S. troops to protect Syrian oil that does not belong to us. And President Trump talked about, yeah, we'll take some for ourselves and maybe send an ExxonMobil to manage that for us. Secretary Esper, when asked, he confirmed that this was the case, and when asked, well, you're going to fight to protect this oil even from the Syrians and the Russians? And he said, yes. To be clear, we're talking about resources, oil that does not belong to the United States. It's Syrian oil. It belongs to Syrian people. Number one, it is a disservice to our troops to dishonor them by sending them on a mission that has nothing to do with our national security. This is about oil. Number two, Congress has not authorized this. Our troops have been in Syria under the authorization of Congress. that was passed shortly after 9/11 to defeat Al-Qaeda and its affiliates and offshoots like ISIS. Doesn't matter what they say. You know, they said, oh, they want to protect this oil from ISIS. But that follow-up question to Secretary Esper, he said, well, actually, yeah, well, we're going to from the Syrians who actually own the oil and the Russians so that we can make sure that we give the money to the Syrian Kurds so that they can buy more vehicles and weapons to fight ISIS. They're being very, as you said, being very blatant and transparent about their purpose. The problem is it's illegal and unconstitutional. The last thing I'll say on this is it is yet the latest move, it's yet the latest piece of evidence that this regime change effort that's been ongoing in Syria since 2011 is continuing. And the tactics that have been used in this regime change effort in Syria have primarily consisted of two things. One is waging a proxy war. Maybe not having our troops do it directly, but providing arms and equipment to terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and others affiliated with them because they're the most powerful ground fighting force to be able to then go and overthrow the Syrian government. This has been happening. Previous administration and this one. Number two, waging what is essentially a modern day siege through draconian sanctions that are ongoing, and this stealing of Syrian oil is yet the latest move in this modern day siege, which ultimately is hurting the Syrian people most. People who are having a hard time getting access to basic energy so that they can have heat during the winter, blocking them from getting the kinds of basic food, water, and medicines that they need to survive, and blocking them from being able to start the heavy process of beginning to rebuild their own country. The Syrian people are the ones, especially the most vulnerable, the elderly and the children who are being harmed the most. Yet again, why I keep calling for an end to being the world's police, calling for an end to these continuous regime change efforts and wars with whatever tactics are being used. Stay tuned. We'll be announcing, we're getting a strong partner in the Senate, and we'll be announcing it very soon. Thanks. Thank you. I'm sorry we're out of time. Thank you for the great responsibility that you have, the choices that you have before you. I know you don't take it lightly. If you like what you heard this evening and you want to be helpful, we need your help. We are a fully people-powered campaign. We take no PAC or lobbyist contributions, and we're getting close. I think we're at about 100 days before the voting begins here in New Hampshire. I'm going to pass the mic off to Nitya, and she's going to share a little bit about how you can be helpful.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.